And now it would be a fireside chat from hands-on to hands-off, their Veriff story.
So now we're going to hear the founder's story stepping down from day-to-day operations, and we would like to invite Cate Lawrence, senior writer at Tech.eu, as well as Gorohhov, co-founder at Veriff. Please welcome!
That's right.
Yeah.
Hey, everyone. All right. Good to be here. Welcome, everybody, to our fireside chat. I'm Cate, and I'm going to be sort of leading the conversation a little bit today. Jana, maybe you'd like to start by introducing yourself. Tell us a bit about yourself, Veriff. What is Veriff? What do you do? And your role. What were you doing there?
Yeah, first of all, it's amazing to be here in Riga. It's actually my first time in TechChill. And yeah, so I'm on a career break at the moment because I stepped down in January from the day-to-day work. And for 7 years, I built Veriff as a co-founder and in different roles. The first 3.5 years as a COO, building legal, HR, operations, and overall how does a company operate. And later on the product and technology side. And yeah, now I'm, as most of the companies here are with their hoodies, have their company branding here. I have mine, which is in Estonian isa, which means a father, so this is where I spend my time at the moment. I help startups, advise next generation founders, I do some investing, and it takes a toll of time, actually.
Yeah, totally. And so I guess to start, let's talk a bit about the journey of Veriff. It's a company that started with a small team and grew. You were there for it. I mean, what were some of the, I guess, the rewarding and the challenging aspects of that?
Maybe first, what does Veriff do is online identity verification, and what does it mean in simple terms is if you, for example, want to open a bank account, you don't have to go to the brick-and-mortar office. You can do it online, but an important part of that is that you need to prove who you are, and usually banks and other financial institutions ask for a government-issued ID, and this is exactly the kind of the product that Veriff builds, is to match the person with their government-issued ID. And it's not only financial institutions, it's pretty much every online business needs to build up with their users. But it was a long journey. I think starting first with the positives, it's, for me personally, if I look myself how much I've grown as a person, as a leader, it's just amazing. It's said that 1 year in a startup is actually multiple years in other companies. But actually where does it come from is hiring great talent around the world who teach you a lot about how to do those things. You're a young, hungry founder doing it first time. So we hire people from Meta, Amazon, Typeform, Skype, and then many other places on that. And I think that's clearly one thing that we did right in many of the things that we didn't. I think one of the things that was, you asked about challenges as well a little bit, right? Estonians are amazing at building great products and very engineering focused, but the selling is not in our blood. And I'm not only Veriff, but I've seen other kind of a company struggle with this as well. And it took us a couple of iterations to understand that we don't know how to build a sales engine. And eventually we understood that we need to go over the ocean to actually do that. So I think those are the kind of the top twos. I think there's many more in that, but yeah.
I'm curious. I mean, that's so interesting. What's behind that? Is it kind of a humbleness? Is it not having a bullshit capacity to talk the talk? Like, where do you think that kind of comes from, that cultural aspect?
I think it is a little bit, this humbleness is, when the kind of the COVID outbreak was, then you said that, hey, you need to be at least 2 meters or something like that from everyone, and when they removed those restrictions in Estonia, then Estonians were very happy that, okay, we can go back to the 5-meter rule now. Exactly, it's a little bit this kind of humbleness. It's not wanting to maybe oversell, which I've seen in more on the kind of the US-based companies, that they are very aggressive on the sales side. And it interestingly also plays out if I look at the dynamics of Veriff versus other companies. Veriff is very kind of product-focused, KPI-focused, a strong product, whereas the other competitors are more about this little nice packaging, and it's a different strategy. I'm not saying right or wrong, but it shows a little bit that it's deep inside of us to not maybe oversell that much.
And with your early customers, who were they? Was it more traditional banking and finance, or was it like neobanks, or was it someone else? Blockchain, I don't know, crypto?
Yes, the first customers actually, interestingly, were banks who aren't that who don't have that big of risk appetite. And this is where Latvia and Riga has a special place in my heart, because our first customers were in Estonia, but our first global expansion was to Latvia, actually.
Oh, awesome.
So in Estonia it was LHV Bank, in Latvia the next one was Citadele Bank, where we powered onboarding. But we thought that if we go to Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, it's not a very kind of a global approach eventually, and which led us into Y Combinator, and this is where we actually understood that, hey, it's not only a problem of financial institutions, it's pretty much online marketplaces, mobility. Bolt is an example of a customer. It's also building trust, like Trustpilot, for example, and pretty much my favorite example is now that I have a kid, it's also building the trust in online gaming that Epic Games, who's a major platform, has a daughter company, Cate Web Services, that built those tools, and they are using identity verification as one measure how to build up trust so that the children are protected online, because identity builds trust, builds accountability into that system.
Yeah, it's a really good use case, age verification.
Yeah.
And that's just beginning, you know, it's kind
Yep.
of thin end of wedge with YouTube and these sort of platforms. Yeah,
Yep.
for sure. Tell me a bit about the kind of expansion of the company in terms of numbers, like headcount. Where did it start and where is it now? And how did that come about a bit?
So when I joined 7 years ago, it was 5 of us in one single room, and at the moment it's more than 400. We were at 500. We needed to cut down as well, and I think the kind of the craziest growth was that we grew from 50 people to 200 people in half a year, which meant that if you walk back from there, we had 20 people starting some weeks, but in order to get to 20 people, you need to actually, how many do you need to interview to get there? And talking to, during that period with Skype people who had built Skype as well, they said that Skype hadn't even grown so fast, and you think about the challenges, IKEA's ran out of chairs that we could actually buy from them. So, but crazy period, and definitely very fun looking backwards.
And one thing I've heard is that as a company expands its headcount, who you are every 50 people changes. So how were you able to, or did you stay sort of true, if you like, to those original aims and sort of mission, or culture is probably the underlying thing there that really drives it. Did the company culture change as you grew?
I think it didn't. And yet again, there's a lot of things that we didn't do right, but luckily we did some of the things right. So I think 2 things that help with that. Number 1 is we hired senior leaders who had scaled before, and that helped a lot. Second is actually until we got to 300-ish people, me or Carl is my co-founder CEO, interviewed as the final stage every person. So that helped us to actually kind of make sure that we get the right people with the right mindset for that stage. But despite of that, it's still, I remember that we were just opening up the US office, hired first 3 people. When the lockdown started, everything went online. And by the time that we had our first summer days after the kind of the lockdowns, it was already a team of 40 people, something like that. You haven't met them except for those 3 people, and I felt a little bit kind of insecure going into the summer days about it, but when I met the people face to face, spent time with them, I understood that it's just amazing, and it did work out for us.
I mean, there's nothing sadder than doing like a remote happy hour on Zoom, you know?
Yeah, in there.
I've done some of those, and it's a challenge, I got to say.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that comes up with as companies grow and expand and change and evolve is that you also lose people. People gain skills and they go on to new roles. What were some of the things you did to be able to retain knowledge as well? Some of those things that not everyone writes down, or legacy knowledge perhaps.
So what did we do to keep people happy?
Yeah.
I think when I kind of went around and asked from people as well, why do you actually work in Veriff? There's one thing, of course, you do those kind of quarterly kind of feedback cycles, but actually talking with people and two things were kind of most commonly referred to me is number one is the problem space that Veriff is in is kind of building the trust online, and it's close to heart to a lot of people. So having a vision on having a problem that's kind of a lot of people can align with is good. But you can't. I'm just thinking if you're a startup founder listening at the moment, you can't change that at the moment.
Yeah.
So I think the other things is it goes so much back to the talent. It goes so much back to the kind of the first hires that you make, and if you have great people, they will hire great people, and it's a snowball effect. And the second thing that was referred to me was that because of the people that are here, because I can learn from them, because they're just nice people to work with, and one of the values in Veriff is the force for good. It's because of what we're doing, but also it's to be freaking nice with people as well, be a force for good and help, and exactly those are the things that are maintaining a good company culture on that.
Yeah, if people want to come to work, you're going to have a happy team and people are going to stay, right?
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So let's talk about sort of the tech underpinning the company. I mean, ID verification is a big, expanding, evolving area that gets more complex. What are some of the, maybe the changes you saw during the company, and where is it kind of going? What is sort of what's next for that area as well?
It's a very good question. I think I'll maybe go from who is Veriff battling against. It's 200 billion is lost each year to identity theft. That's huge. And it's not the company's core business, if you think about the bank or anyone else, to actually battle this. And so Veriff is, additionally to getting check marks, to compliance, it's also battling against fraudsters that honest people don't lose money. And so the question goes into what's in the toolkit of those fraudsters. I'm pretty sure, I think this week or last week, the next kind of a video came out where you could add your body into a video and it analyzed this, that you go on stage. And that shows exactly the tools that AI is bringing to us. And it's going very mainstream, that I can go online, there's a web page, I can create for myself a fake ID.
Yeah.
And it's more and more we're going to see tools like this that simplify the life of the bad guys, and I think that's a clear trend line. The second one is deepfakes, and especially it's the election season going on in kind of in Europe and in US as well, and already we were seeing it being used in identity verification as well, that it's more and more harder just by using a human's eye to make a difference between a fake, deepfake video or a photo versus an authentic one.
Yeah, for sure. And what about things like voice verification? I mean, I think one example we were talking about yesterday was, you probably saw in the media a few months ago, there was a guy that was in a remote meeting. He was some kind of financial office at an office in Asia, meeting with, 2 or 3 colleagues in suits, and they said, transfer some money. And he did. Turns out the actual people didn't exist. So he just basically, took money from his company.
Yeah, I think it's just a different form of fraud, and then same things in identity verification as well. Elderly people get, it doesn't have to be even AI, elderly people get social engineered and called and said that, hey, you need to kind of transfer the money there, and then there's different tools that actually banks and other institutions use for that. It's usually some form of authentication and then making sure that it's actually the right person behind that, but social engineering is actually the trickiest. We had even a case that people were willing to sell a picture of their identity document or not. They're walking on the street and another person, the fraudster, were coming to them and said that, hey, I'll give you a 2-liter Coca-Cola if you're willing to allow me to take a picture of your ID. Also, actually, they opened up an account on a platform and resold it on a black market, but if you're thinking about it, who's willing to give out their identity document for a 2-liter Coca-Cola? It's nuts, but not in some countries the 2-liter Coca-Cola is a lot on that, and that exactly fraudsters are very clever, and it's a big business that they're operating in on that, and that's the scary part.
Yeah, and it's very lucrative. I mean, you can go on the black market and buy someone's driver's license from the US or Europe for, 20 euros or something, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing I always hear now, because there's so many scams in this area, I think my folks got scammed at one point. Your bank will never call you. They will never send you a WhatsApp message. They will never send you a text message, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And you mentioned Y Combinator. I know whenever I mention Y Combinator to people, their eyes light up, So I'd love to hear a bit about, how you got in. Let's start with that. How did you get in? Because people always want to know that. They always ask me about it. How do people get into these programs, right?
So the honest answer is we didn't get in on the first try. And I think that's what kind of talking mainly to the founders in this room as well, is that you don't take the first no for an answer and you keep on trying. But actually, how we actually thought about Y Combinator was Y Combinator does those kind of office hours, which is their marketing event. They flew to Tallinn. They wanted to meet with a couple of companies, Veriff was one of them, and then Gustav Hallströmer, who was working on growth in Airbnb, knew the problem with identity within Airbnb, and hence pushed us to, hey, fill in an application and go forward from that. And we filled in the application like you have to. What happens next is they get loads of applications, thousands of them. They pick out the most promising one. Back in the day, you needed to fly to US for a 10-minute interview. So we landed on Wednesday, first interview. Friday, flew back, so a very short trip with a lot of jet lag.
Yeah, right.
And then they either say to you yes or no. To us, they said no. But what's the beauty with Y Combinators? They actually give you feedback. What was the problem? So we had a bullet list of things, and we solved them in a record time, in a month, and we went back to them, okay, we solved all the problems that you didn't like. And it wasn't like, hey, change the name of the company, or it was actually cap table changes, which usually take time. And they really loved that we were able to act so swiftly, because they are always looking for how do founders solve curveballs, because you're gonna have curveballs and you need to go through them. Doesn't matter if it's customers, employees, investors, something else, and that's exactly the grit that Y Combinator is looking for on that.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And what do you do in the program?
Sorry?
What do you do in the program? Like when you get in, what happens?
First of all, I don't have any benefit in saying this, but this has been one of the best experiences in my personal life, and trajectory setter for Veriff as well, in my opinion. And why is that it's tough. It was a little bit tougher for us because we had a In Tallinn, actually, a small team, like 20 people, so the time difference, 10 hours. So we're working like 20 hours a day. You meet with the customers during the day, and then you set the sprint plan for the product in the evening, which is the morning in Estonia, and for that, like 3 months. But why is it great is you're talking with the customers, you're building the product, you have the best operators who have built companies like Monzo, who have worked in Airbnb, who have built Twitch, and you have actually people who have the operators' experience to guide you and mentor you. We had Airbnb founders and Dropbox founders talking to us about their experience. And eventually, the dream of every founder, you get to put on stage, and you need to do the same pitches that kind of the startups here did. You have 2 minutes on stage, but the kind of the economical terms is that we had, I think, 100 during when we went through that, 100 founders on stage versus 1,000 investors. So it's a lot of demand for that, and that's a good reason why, among others, why startups raise a little bit on crazier valuations. But at the same time, there was just statistics shared that they looked at the UK, US unicorns and looked, okay, which are the kind of the investors that actually find those unicorns. Number one was Y Combinator, and 10% of the unicorns, they were founder. Second was SV Angels, which was something like 5-6%. Next was Sequoia, 2 point something percent, and then it was the kind of the long tail, which shows a little bit that no investor is clearly leading at finding the unicorns, but it also shows that that Y Combinator is the best in that. And by the way, YC and SV Angels both actually are in the cap table of Veriff as well, so they get 1 point from there.
And I mean, you've probably gone back to 4 hours sleep a night now, right? Because you've had a child. What's it been like going from being in that sort of full-on environment where you're always on, you're always, your head is in the business, to being a father?
I think there's definitely a lot of positive emotions in kind of becoming a father and then raising a kid, and then hard to describe that. But on the flip side is that it actually you start to miss that stress, and that's when I understood that I'm a little bit addicted to the problems, but not actually the problems, but you get the kick when you solve a problem, and then the company grows, or you hire someone great, or you get the customer, or you solve a big customer fire, or something like that, and that's exactly what you miss, and then start to look a little bit in the next chapter.
How far in did you kind of start going, I might have another idea for something else, or maybe there's a moonshot company you might like to work for in the future?
I think it goes a little bit into what's my strengths and what's my weaknesses. And one of the things that I absolutely loved with kind of working, and then why me and Carl worked so well together, was he's a total visionary. And my background is actually in engineering. I like mathematics. I like boxes a lot around that vision, and it goes back into that. Is that I'm a builder. I'm not a visionary, and this is where. I think there's always a chance that I come up and I see a problem and I start building on that, and I definitely haven't ruled it out, but it's not that important to me that I'm rather looking to fall in love with the problem and the team, rather than, hey, I come up with the vision, I start building it, which seems to be like the kind of the normal trajectory for a lot of founders on that. But yeah, this is who I am.
It's good to be different, right? And you're now an angel investor, which is a great way to give back. Can you tell me a bit about, what are you investing in? What's your kind of investment thesis? What are you looking for? What excites you in tech?
It's interesting, actually, how I got into angel investing. It wasn't that, hey, I'm going to be an angel investor now and start investing and actually make a lot of money from that. It's rather very kind of organic, that if you're building a company, of course, founders are going to ask advice from you. Hey, how did you solve X, Y, Z? And when I was in that situation, I called to Bolt's founder, for example, that, hey, I need to build up HR function. How did you do it? And and two other founders, and they were happy to share that experience with me. And while doing exactly the same and giving back, you understand that eventually that conversation leads to, hey, do you want to do a ticket as well? Do you want to continue kind of advising and helping us? And this is where kind of most of my portfolio, it's a small one, 4 or 5, and a couple of about to be signed on that. You get exactly to those investments, but that's not the primary, because I very much enjoy helping the founders. Let's be honest, it's a tough road, and all the help that you can get helps you, and exactly kind of giving back, especially when I have time at the moment, it's good to kind of help those companies, and sure, there's a financial return eventually somewhere as well in that.
Are there any particular verticals or sectors you're kind of excited about at the moment?
I'm very excited about, and I know that you don't like the answer. It's the Gen AI and overall how AI can change the and that. It's very interesting. What comes with that is there is a lot of things that are not going to work and aren't built won't find the product market fit. But within that, I think there's a lot of interesting. So if I look at the companies that I've invested, there's a lot of kind of AI-driven products in that. But even more when I look as well, I think in that kind of early phase, I don't have a check mark that, hey, it needs to have AI. It's more about, if I look at the people that I'm talking to, do I believe that the problem, or kind of where do they go and start solving? Do I believe that they are the ones that are going to solve it? Do I believe in those people? Because I've seen as well, you pivot or you change, and you don't give up and you change. So it's more about this kind of a founder market fit, how I call it. So I think that's even more important. That and looking at in my portfolio, like different examples, is AI is one of them. But on the other side, there's Woola, who is replacing bubble wrap with fur, sheep fur. And it's not a tech product, but absolutely love the founder, so much energy, and I can see that the rest of the market, the customers love her as well. So a totally different amplitude of examples on that, right?
So it sounds like there's almost a personality aspect to getting involved with founders as people, not just problem solvers or techies or whatever.
Yep.
That's exciting.
Yep.
And what's next? What's your next plan from here?
At the moment, it's I know that the next gig or the next kind of a building, it's a marathon. Let's be honest. You need to prepare for that, and that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm taking the time off, enjoying it, traveling, educating myself, coding, visiting lectures in the university, talking with founders, advising them. But in the meantime, I'm actually kind of looking and finding the problem to fall in love, where I want to kind of spend the next 5 to 10 years, which is kind of average length of a venture, and I'm sure it will come. There's a lot of interesting things that are being built on that, but there needs to also be a kind of a match from my side and the company side for it to work out, and nothing to do. It's a purely timing aspect. Yeah,
it's a good place to be in. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Really enjoyed chatting with you, and thanks everyone for being in our being part of the chat.
Yeah, thank you everyone, and thanks to Cate as well.